afternoon, Nate.
Hello, Rian. How are you doing?
You made it all the way home.
I have, I have, and I'm just now getting over the jet lag. It's a whole real thing.
So have you been big in Japan?
Sorry, say again.
So have you been big in Japan?
I'm sorry. I've got like an ear thing going on. Could you repeat that again?
I said, have you been big in Japan?
Have I been big in Japan? No, no, I'm small in Japan. I am. Yeah,
But
no,
but if
I.
I ate this joke there.
Oh, that's good. It's a gooder. I just couldn't hear it, and then couldn't parse it. Um, But no, I came back with here's some mundane stuff about Nate you don't need. I came back with like a bit of a weird ear infection thing, so I can't really hear out the right half of my head, which
Oh,
is
that's not nice.
no, it's annoying. So if this keeps up, then I get to go and see a doctor later. But that's tale for a different day, I think. So I'm sorry I didn't get the agenda up sooner. But let me while we're waiting, folks. Uh,
I think we might be a little thin today because I had a short call with Jay earlier on, and he's out to
yeah,
deal with a family thing.
yeah, I believe both Jay and Ali are out today, so um, that's okay. If it's just you and I, then it might be a quick one. But I do want to get some stuff down. Um, Mentor meeting for
Oh, my focus was
the.
elsewhere as well.
I'm sorry, say again.
I said my focus was elsewhere as well. So
Oh,
if you
okay,
have a
yeah, no
look
problem.
at the agenda.
Okay, so how are you doing? Since this is an official CNCF meeting, and I know even though it's just the two of us, it's an official meeting of Tag Contributor Strategies Mentoring Working Group, and as such is covered by the CNCF Code of Conduct, which Rian, I think, means potentially you and I should be kind to each other today.
Good. Let's do that.
Yes. So thank you for that. So we've got a fairly light. Uh, um, Oops, I put all of this in attendance rather than show me down the agenda, and we can update the attendance here. Um, so just a quick update. Diane and I did a talk. It was the first time I had ever been put on the big stage. And we weren't like in the keynote section, but we were on the big stage with like the lights, and that was the first time I had ever done
Oh,
that. Yeah, it was fun. It
nice.
was I was a little nervous for the first like minute and a half. Then I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't different from any other talk I've given.
Mm,
But it was yeah, it was a fun. I think we did well.
nice.
Met a lot of folks in Japan, including some folks I'm hoping to recruit into some more mentorship opportunities around um, mentorship in um, uh, not only in Japan, but we have a CNCF China office that I hope will also be able to help us out with some of this stuff. So that's still that's all preliminary talks at this point, but it could be interesting. So Halifax 2023 term 3, we're basically done. I'm hoping to get the blog post up today. There's a couple of little bits here and there. There's still a couple of folks who need to get their stipend paid, but by and large, we've got all the evals in now. The failure rate was quite high this term. Over the course of the whole year, we were at 10%, or like 9.8%. In this term, I think we had 8 failures of 42. So is that 42? 8
almost
divided by
20%.
42. That's almost 20%. Yeah, it's a significant number of folks either dropped or were failed out through the evaluation process. So that doesn't make me happy, particularly because we had been doing so well in the first 2 terms. And so this is part of one of the things that I'd like to start doing. We also had an issue this year, this last semester, where 2 mentors basically kind of dropped out or were unreachable to the point where I had one mentee actually open up an LFX support ticket to say, hey, where's my mentor? And another one was just not responding. I think what happened was they had the wrong email set. They had their work one or their personal one, and they needed to use the other of those 2. Now, I actually wound up reaching out to the project maintainers list to try and sort this out, which was it's not a good way to have to, like, if we're sort of having folks not responsive as a mentor, that's I don't like that.
That's not good.
Yeah.
So
No,
if you had a loss of 8, so 2 of those are accounted for by mentor dropout.
Yeah.
So 6 has been accounted by mentee.
In both of those cases, those mentees actually passed. Once we got everything straightened out, yeah, they were able to.
Okay. Cool.
So what I want to do starting next semester is 2 things. I want to make sure that every project has at least 2 mentors. We're already doing this with Google Summer of Code, but I think that we should apply that to LFX as well. The other thing that I'd like to do is, and this will probably, and this I don't want to implement this without having like a more robust discussion. So maybe we can open maybe we can, like, I'm gonna do it, but maybe like the constraint here. So I'll tell you what I want to do. I want to have at the beginning, in the proposal phase, where all of the maintainers and potential mentors are putting forward, hey, these are projects we want folks to work on. We usually go through, okay, is there an upstream issue? Do these make sense? Do you have a mentor? We do a sanity pass on there before we accept them. What I'd like to do is schedule a potential mentor Zoom chat. It could be up to like 50 people, where we go through and say, okay, here are the expectations. Here's the responsibilities. Here's what this should look like. Go through some of the processes, why we require evaluations, why they should be done on time, things like that. But I think that having like a face-to-face with folks is a good idea to start the semester with the mentors. And so I think I'm going to do that. Now, here's the piece that I think might be a little bit controversial. I'd like to require attendance. And if we then don't have attendance, then the proposal is declined. right?
Mm.
So I'd like to, hi, Josh, how's it going?
Well, Josh,
Hey there. Sorry, overlapping meetings.
No worries. I'm gonna go back and sort of repeat a little bit because I think I'd like your opinion on some of this stuff that we're talking about right now. So term three is basically finished, all but the last blog post and a couple of stipends to be approved. And I think that you're aware that we had an issue with a couple of mentors. Or maybe you weren't. Well, we had for the midterm, we had two mentors that were non-responsive enough that one of the mentees actually opened up an LFX support ticket saying, "Hey, where's my mentor?" And I said, "That's a very good question. Let me try and find out." And they were unresponsive enough that I actually wound up having to email the maintainers list to try and sort some of this stuff out. And we got that sorted out, but it was not a good look. It's not what we want from our mentors. And now that we're through the semester, over the year now, overall, we had, I think, 144 successful projects run through. I was aiming for 150, but we had, I think, a 10% failure rate. Now, we were doing pretty good until term three. Term three's failure rate was, I think, 8 out of 42. So we had about a 20% fail, like actual, like, through evaluations, mentees just not get the passing grade that we need. And so one of the things I'd like to, two things I'd like to do here to mitigate some of this. One is, I like the Google Summer of Code program. I'm going to require 2 mentors per LFX project so that we don't run into this issue where, like, people just drop off the planet. And then secondly, the thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to ask a question after I describe what I want to do is at the beginning. So at the beginning of every term, we have a call for proposals, and the projects say, okay, we'd like this particular piece of work done. We go through, we do a sanity check, we do make sure there's an upstream issue and all that. And normally we rubber stamp. We just say, okay, your proposal is in. Now, while this proposal period is open, I would like to, and this is something I think I will do, is have a Zoom meeting with all of the prospective mentors. Say, okay, if you're interested in this program, come have a chat with me. I'll lay out what the program is, what the expectations are, why we should be doing things on time, even though there is a little bit of flexibility. Like, I mean, if you need an extra week, let me know. I'll have to give you an extra week for things. But we can't have people just drop off the planet. And people do need to realize that because there is a pay associated with this, that we can't be very late with these stipend payments because it's disrespectful for the mentees. So here's the controversial part. I would like to make that meeting attendance requirement, where like I explained to the mentors things like, hey, you know what, this is a full-time. The expectation is the mentee is working full-time, so that's 32 to 40 hours. So they're not like, and the mentor effort should be commensurate with that. So they should be spending potentially to 5 hours a week or so.
Yeah.
Right. Like that. And I'm hoping what that does is it helps tighten up some of the stuff around like the tardiness and the communication issue, because all of a sudden I'll have a face rather than just being this disembodied email. But I also think that it will help us to coach our mentors in what we need from them before they get either accepted or agree to do the mentoring. So I would expect to do that sort of in the last week of whenever the CFPs are open. And again, maybe we don't have time to implement the requirement on this next go through. Maybe we in the first term have a discussion about how we want to sort of improve our processes for terms 2 and 3. But I am going to at least do that sort of Zoom meeting. But I'm looking for ways to improve our processes still, because again, a 20% failure rate in one semester is
Yeah.
a little
So, yeah. So let me share a couple of things, some of which are things you can adopt and other things that I don't know that you can do anything about.
Mm.
Right. And the things that you can adopt, one of the things, like by full maturity of Google Summer of Code, one of the things that with Google Summer of Code is by the time it was like in full swing is every organization has to have an admin,
Mhm.
2 admins for large organizations.
Right.
And every project has to have a backup mentor assigned.
Yeah.
Right. And we could see starting to kind of roll those out as soft requirements. Is the idea that, hey, there should be somebody assigned from the sort of host team,
Right.
as supervision, who is not the mentor themselves.
Right.
And second, to have people actually identify a backup mentor.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that being, and this is how I solved the issue with the mentors I had gone. I had wound up emailing the maintainer list, right, saying, "Hey, this is a problem. This is your project. Like what can we do here?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm just concerned that, and I like that idea. I like the idea of having sort of like administrative, but like with a program our size, I feel like that is again now sort of putting more. Like I don't like maintainers are our most time-starved sort of community members, and I have to be sort of cognizant of that.
Well, I mean, part of it is, I mean, for the bigger projects, one of the things to emphasize is that, well, a maintainer needs to submit the project. They don't have to be the mentor.
That's
right?
true too, and
the mentor just needs to have some kind of approval rights. But if what the mentee is working on is a sub project or a side project or whatever, that person may not be a maintainer, right? Obviously that doesn't help for the smaller projects, right? For the smaller projects, there really isn't anybody else. And the other thing is that I will say, anything that you do to bring quality up is ultimately going to mean having fewer projects.
Well, that was the other thing I was concerned about too, and I think I'm okay with that, because we're sitting at like I said, we had 144 successful projects. We were aiming for like 150. Last year, I think we had about 100, and so I feel comfortable with like being between 100 and 150. And so I feel like, yeah, if we put in a little bit more, yes, we will necessarily reduce our participation rate, but I'm not sure that's like, if we have higher quality output, right, that doesn't fail 20% of our mentees, right? Like, I mean, that's the trade-off. Fewer higher quality.
Now I'm going to have to bring up the other thing, which is just to say that the current LFX tooling does not allow projects to select for the best quality mentees.
That's explain. So
the fact that the tooling is so bad and doesn't include programmatic ways to communicate with the mentees and for the mentees to demonstrate their fitness for the mentorship means that the projects tend to select a mentee because they're expedient, not necessarily because they're the best candidate.
Yeah, that's I agree. The tooling is difficult and somewhat obtuse. And this is actually one of the things I'm setting as a goal for myself next year, is to work more closely with the team that develops that, to try and do things a little bit differently. And I've had that goal maybe that I've been wanting to try and get the LFX tooling improved for a while. Unfortunately, I haven't. I'm not the one building it, so I don't have a whole lot of access. But I am. There have been a couple of shifts, and so I'm going to see if I can't even set up maybe like a monthly or quarterly meeting with the folks who are building it, and say, okay, here are some of the things, even if it's just piecemeal, that we need to do to try and make that.
I mean,
system better.
Good luck. I gave them a full rundown of feedback on what it would take to bring LFX up to the standards of GSOC 3 years ago, and not one of those recommendations has been implemented.
No, I'm aware. So this is
but I'm saying it's contributing to the failure rate. Overall, though, one of the things that you want to do is, since you now have a whole set of failure cases, is to actually do some cause analysis there, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I know the problems I've chronically dealt with for LFX mentorships, right? Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're representative of all the failures.
That's I agree, and this is something that Diane and I have discussed while we were in Japan. Is can we pretend it's like 6 weeks ago, and see if the data at 6 weeks ago would have told us something, or at 4 weeks ago would have told us a little bit more. In addition to looking at, okay, well, like, was this in fact a good project? Should we have accepted this in the first place? So things like
well, there's other things. I mean, ultimately, you're going to have to interview some of the people involved. And find out exactly, why did this project die, right? And I think a lot of them are going to fall into two classes. One is lack of mentor support, and another one is mentee disappeared.
Which both of those things,
or misrepresented their qualifications. And with a healthy amount of random unrelated things happen that nevertheless interfered with the mentorship. Because like I've certainly been, but like in GSOC, I've been through it plenty of times where we, for example, had a required security patch that effectively suspended the internship for like 4 weeks because it wasn't an area related to what they were working on. But the other thing is, one of the other things that actually would be changeable you might want to look at is the idea that most mentorship work should be done in public repositories, and those public repositories should be incrementally updated.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Because one of the things that we run into as a problem in terms of having visibility into a mentorship going bad is that none of the work was being checked into GitHub. And as a result, until like a week before it was due, and as a result, we didn't know that they were lagging behind.
Oh yeah. Well, this is one of the things that I want to, in my onboarding meeting, is say, hey, look, open up PRs well early. And this is something that I do myself. Like if I'm working on something, I'll open up a PR, set it to draft, and work on it there. And that's what we need to coach folks to do, is because otherwise we don't have that visibility. And again, this is open source. We work in the open. This is the thing that we should be training people on how to do, but we need to coach the mentors on how to require that.
Yeah, and if none of it's remotely ready to check in, then create a public fork. And work on the public fork, right? Yep. But somewhere we can monitor. This is actually something that has gotten less good in GSOC. Back when GSOC required your development to be on Google Code, because Google Code existed as a thing.
Right, of course,
they actually had you created through the platform a Google Code repo and did your work there. And that allowed the GSOC admins to actually monitor and alert people when there wasn't any visible progress. So I mean, this is one of those cases where if we had people who were responsive to us who could build tools, we could actually do something, right? Because you
Yeah.
could have the projects individually check in and say, hey, this is the repo where work is being done. And then after that, we could monitor that.
Well,
But we do
this
not
is
have the
where,
tooling for that.
like, I would like to do because it's a 12-week program, right? I'd like to do like a 2-week check-in. After 2 weeks, like we got started, Google Summer Code calls it the community bonding period. Like that's your setup phase, and I'd like to check in at the 2-week mark and say, hey, is this how are folks doing? Let's get
Right.
everybody sort of like putting hands up if you've got a repo cloned, right?
Right.
Let's make sure that
Yeah.
we've got things moving in the right direction. Now, I don't want to be overly, like, as an admin, I don't want to be too prescriptive, but I think that we do need to put in some more checks. Another thing that was interesting to me, one of the folks who did fail was one of the folks who opted out of the stipend. They normally I don't allow. It's come up once or twice, and I've allowed it twice now, and now I've got like a 50% failure rate with folks who have like declined the stipend for whatever reason. And normally the rule is you have to be able to work in the place that you're in. And sometimes these mentors or mentees are like, oh well, I'm still interested, but I'm not able to work, or I've moved, or whatever the rationale is. And I think I would like to say, okay, no, you have to be in a place where you accept the stipend, because otherwise you take a carrot and a stick away from the mentor, right? It's like, oh well, it's like I'm not getting paid for this, I'm out. I'll see you later, right? And so that's another sort of situation where somebody like failed out, and I'm like, well, what happened? Potentially that was an issue. So, and yeah, so I think we should go through and do a full sort of postmortem is a terrible term, but a review of what happened last semester. And I think you're right. Probably doing some interviews is a good idea. Something I would like to share. One of the things, actually, before we move on from that, is there anything else you'd like to add? Or Rian, have you got some thoughts on this?
No, but yeah, I do hear more control, and if you have more control, you're probably going to lose some.
Yeah, I would think so.
The goal is to lose, right? The goal is to lose mainly the failures.
Yes,
exactly.
precisely.
That was my next point. If you're going to lose some, you probably lose the failure just at the front.
Yeah.
One of the other things I actually do want to advise on this, including this is sort of advice for you with dealing with CNCF and the LF, is to figure out what a normal rate of failures is, because it's not zero, right? 20% is clearly too high.
Yeah.
But if the rate of zero was, but if it was zero, then that would mean that we were passing some students who hadn't done any work.
Exactly. My goal actually is about 6%.
Yeah.
And the reason I set that goal is based on some discussions I've had with folks I know in academia. And it's about 5 or 6% failure rate for most classes.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of, I'm like, okay, well, let's start there and see what it actually is, and say, maybe our natural failure rate is about 10%. I don't think it should be quite that high, but maybe it is. I don't know yet. So you're right. The other thing, I've talked to Ali, and one of the things that we want to do as one of the first things, as now he's a new co-chair, we're going to, and maybe Rian, I can enlist you a little bit on some of this, because you helped so much on the first iteration. We've got a really good Google Summer Code admin process for the CNCF. I'd like to build out a best practices document for LFX as well, where we can capture some of this and say, okay, here's our procedures, here's what we want to do, here's what we would talk about in a welcoming meeting, here's the things that we're looking for in proposals and all that sort of stuff. So put into writing some of what we're discussing as best practices moving forward. So hopefully that's something that we can set as a goal for next year, that we have another document sort of helping us go through some of that. So moving on, one of the things that we did, I spoke with Christoph and Chris, or Chris is now running the training team. And I've been looking for a little, like a way of saying thank you to our mentors. And so what we've done is we've given out each mentor a voucher for training or certification through the CNCF training program. So that email went out by way of thanks. Some of the feedback that has come back is folks are also interested in things like Credly badges and whatnot, and that's something that I'm looking into for next year as well. Credly is a little bit more complex, but it's something I think would be a doable thing as well.
Why is it more complex?
We do it manually.
Oh, okay.
And so
it's more complex because you don't have any tooling on your side. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna, not even ashamed to say it. That's why I've been shying away from it. But it is something I think we should probably look at doing friendly badges for both mentors and mentees. I think would be probably a good thing. So that's something to look forward to. So moving on, term one, Halifax term one is coming up. I'm going to put an availability note in as well. I'm going to be on vacation from December 15th through January 14th. So I will actually not be around for the first portion of the CFP, but I've got, and this maybe Rian, you can help with some of the PRs that come in. But Ali will also be taking a look at those. And I will be around for the second half, so I'm not concerned about that. More concerning to me is that the LFX Mentee Summit is coming up, and it's usually done in the second or third week of January. So I'm probably going to completely miss that. And normally I would be the one who does the selection for the CNCF. So I don't know if you, the Mentee Summit is not like a big, it's essentially anybody who's been a mentee is eligible to propose a talk. It's a virtual conference that runs over 2 days. It's like, it's actually like a 48
So
hour.
why don't you change the schedule to when you're available?
Well, it's the LF. It's LF, not just CNCF.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If it were me, if it were just the CNCF stuff, then yes, I would probably put it in February. But it's not my summit. So I'm going to ask Shalea and Ali to take care of reaching out to the CNCF. Because it's the kernel, it's Hyperledger, it's everybody. We do So, but we will when it comes up, I'll share out a link to it, because it is actually an interesting summit, or is it a summit or I hesitate to call it a conference. I don't know exactly what I would call it, but it's showcase. Maybe it's showcase is a good term. It's the LFX Mentees Showcase. And mentees just talk about what they did. They get a video that we would link, and it's more stuff for portfolios and stuff like that. So that's part of why we do it. And then my availability note. So yeah. So is there anything that I'm missing here that we should talk about that I've forgotten to bring on?
Yeah. If you're done with the official agenda, I have a organizational question that interests me. We have time for that. Sure. So we have Linux Foundation LFX as the mentoring, and that's where all the application from the mentees happen. And then we have this program is the CNCF mentorship program. Is there other organizations that's using LFX and plugging in like the CNCF to the organization? How does that get
Yep.
managed?
Yeah. Hyperledger does. Oh, who else? There's a bunch. There's probably about 5 or 6 that use LFX as the platform for their mentoring programs. Like I said, the kernel does. Hyperledger. Neil's program. I can't remember the name of the program. Why can't I remember the name of the program? Casey's program, same thing. I'm remembering the individuals, but not remembering the.
Okay.
So
There's a couple of programs across the Linux landscape that actually use LFX, and then they have.
Yeah.
Is the rules across much the same? Is it standardized across programs? And the stipend come from the program, or does it come from the Linux Foundation?
A little bit of both, I think. We over the course of the last year, we've been we need to re-up on this as well, but we've been having like a monthly mentorship admins meeting where all of the folks who are administering a program sort of get together and we talk about best practices, talk about issues that we've been having, and so on and so forth. And we also have a Linux Foundation Slack channel that we discuss things in as well. And so like we'll be asking each other quite often. It's like, oh well, this happened. This is weird. What do you do? What do you do? And sort of come to a consensus that way. And some programs are different. For instance, most programs are like, okay, a mentee can only participate once. Some programs are like, depending on the situation, maybe a second go is appropriate. Right. So stuff like that is potentially different from also not all of them require like for instance with the kernel, Shua will mentor like 25 mentees. But she's got a process in place where she can do that. We don't have like our mentorship program is set up that our projects do the mentoring, and it wouldn't make sense to have one person have more than a couple of mentees. So that's another difference between some of them. In some cases, it's just it's structured quite differently. But yeah. Yeah, I should actually. Are you in the LF Slack? If you are, I should.
I am on LF Slack, but not on that channel. So why I'm asking is I'm also doing work for Confidential Compute that we discussed on the side. So they're thinking about how to get involved, and I said, okay, let's tie up and discuss where the lines in the relationship to go, to make sure that we follow due process and use the tools already available and not reinvent anything.
Well, that's part of the reason I want to get this document written up, because what we're doing with the CNCF, I think, can be applied at the Linux Foundation level. So I think it would be good. The more we put down on paper, the more we can share, or digitally, I suppose. Not much paper on my desk.
Thanks. That clarifies.
Yep. In fact, I'll do that right now while I'm thinking about it. This will be